You're not an Airbnb guy.
I'm not an Airbnb guy.
Let's dive deep on this.
And that's the thing
Why?
is, because I like to know what I'm getting.
So
right?
where do you go?
I don't go anywhere. My wife, I tell my wife,
So-
hey, can you look and find us
So
something?
she does it.
So
but
the funny thing is,
you go to Florida, you go to the Outer Banks.
Yeah. Florida,
Okay.
Outer Banks, Ocean City.
Where do you, so you don't stay, you stay with family in Florida or no?
No.
You used to.
No. We will,
You don't stay at that house anymore.
So I actually, I'm going to Ocean City. So I got I went through a real estate company. Where did we find that?
Support those real estate agents.
I always do.
How's it going, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of the Shawn and Matt Show. My name is Matt. That is Shawn, and welcome to our show. Shawn, in today's episode, we're going to be talking about the Godfather of real estate's cryptocurrency scam, raw deal, charlatan-esque like activities that is happening in the Atlanta area. We're going to be talking about in New York City how there are more Airbnbs listed than apartments available and how that is affecting the real estate market. And we're going to bring it on home to Burke, Virginia, located just outside of the DC area, and how the Burke market is actually the second most popular suburban market in the entire United States.
Insane.
Shawn and I both have listings there. We've both had buyers there, and the experience that we saw and how that is continuing, how that's stopping, and what we see the future of Burke and all its wonderful man-made lakes and 4-lane highways and glory days and giant grocery stores. So let us begin with an article from WSB TV in ATL. Home sellers say they received raw deal from quote unquote Godfather of real estate's cryptocurrency option, Shawn. And when I read this article, when I saw the little video, my mouth was just foaming at the bit of like how scammy this is, because God. I have kind of always erred on the side like I'm interested in cryptocurrency. I invest in cryptocurrency, but at the same time, there are so many scams out there. I've personally been a victim of a scam, and now I've kind of stopped talking about cryptocurrency because I don't want to be the guy that talks about cryptocurrency all the time. And what happened in Atlanta is a home buyer is out there buying up these properties, and sellers are almost thinking, oh, this is too good to be true, Shawn. It's too good to be true. Like, this is a great offer on my house. I want to move forward. And what they're not realizing is that this buyer is paying for part of the transaction in cryptocurrency. And we've talked about, hey, so-and-so is allowing Bitcoin, so-and-so is accepting Ethereum. No, that's not the coins in this article. This buyer is buying houses by using a cryptocurrency called Troptions.
That should say it right there, right?
Troptions.
That is probably the worst name cryptocurrency that I can
It's
think
like
of.
Troptions slash gold is like the official name of
Awful.
it. And they interviewed one unlucky home seller who was quote unquote paid about $37,000 in what's known as Troptions. And the long of the short of it, you may say like, oh, $37,000. Why don't I just take the Troptions, transfer that to Bitcoin or transfer that to USD, the dollar, and then withdraw that money? Well, you can't. It's what's known as a barter coin, aka a poop coin, because we're a G-rated show, and you can't trade it with anything. It's not listed on any sort of exchanges, and you can't withdraw it. So it's almost like a holding pattern where you just have it, and you hope that, you know, a greater fool, you know, buys more of it to bid it up. But essentially, it's worth nothing. And they showed part of the white paper on the video, and it said, like, imagine if you got in at the ground floor of Amazon or Uber or Microsoft. And whenever a company says like, oh, imagine if this is going to be the next Uber or Amazon. It's like, yeah, imagine if it's going to be the next 1 in a billion companies. That's essentially what they're saying. And so now these people have gone from, oh, this is such a great deal to, oh, I just lost out on $35,000 of equity because I was paid in this scammy coin. Who the buyer says it's not a scam, but then he said he wouldn't sell his own house if you paid him in Troptions, Shawn. So what are your thoughts on the old Troption purchase for real estate?
Yeah, I think it's awful. Always be wary of, this is a real estate agent, and if you could imagine
He's
guy,
an agent,
isn't he? I thought he was.
I guess. Yeah, well,
he's an investor, right? So he writes his own contract. So imagine. You can imagine what he looks like, right? He's got frosted hair. He's working out all the time, and he's just your typical kind of that typical person, right? Oh no, it's a great deal. No, I'm going to sell it to you. That kind of stuff, right? Hey, let me buy your house in paper clips. It's going to be awesome. You can sell those paper clips. It's just a really good deal. So that's basically the guy. And the unfortunate thing is, a lot of people are taking advantage of this cryptocurrency world right now. That, oh my gosh, we've seen how this one went crazy. Troptions is going to be the next thing. I've been fooled into it. I've bought some different cryptocurrencies, and as we all know, they're all down right now. And so what he's doing is, in his contract, he will pay you portions in cash, but 30% of the value is going to be in Troptions. And like you said, once you have the Troptions, people are like, oh, my Troptions value just went up to $1 million. But you can't do anything with it. You have to barter it for something else. You have to find somebody else that's willing to take the Troptions for something else of value. And you basically can't. So you're holding something that's worthless. And, there's been, I guess, cases brought up against him. And truthfully, he didn't do anything wrong, because he didn't say, hey, it said basically, do your research on Troptions before you purchase, or before I purchase this property, before you sign this contract. But, most people are going to be like, well, I'll look, oh, it's a cryptocurrency. It's okay. I'll do it, and not most people. I guess some people will be sucked into that. And now they're finding out that 30% is worthless. And the fact that when he was interviewed and after, the guy said, would you take, would you sell your house to me in Troptions? And he was like, well, I have plenty of Troptions. I don't need any more Troptions. And then he recanted that later after the story and said, okay, I'll sell my house in Troptions. I guarantee you, if I offered him Troptions for that house, he would not sell it.
Yeah, this is like a perfect example of if you're going to do some sort of like off-market deal or like straight, peer-to-peer deal without an agent, just get like an attorney just to look over the contract like one time to make sure that, all is copacetic. Because even in our form field contracts, I had multiple offers on a condo, and then this agent calls me. He's like, yeah, I'm sure you saw at the bottom of paragraph 35 on page 16, we added a one line. I'm like, no, I didn't.
Yeah.
What one line did you add that you didn't tell me about, and you just sent it over? He's like, oh, well, we just wanted to make sure the dishwasher was working. And I was like, well, good thing you didn't say you're going to pay in Troptions.
Yeah, exactly.
Because how are you just going to insert a one-liner and then just like not tell me about it and hope I miss it? I mean, if I can miss a one line about the dishwasher working, then I definitely understand how someone can like just see the dollar figure and be like, oh, this real estate agent of Gold Mine Properties Inc. for 25 years is going, that's actually his wholesale company name, is going to give me a good deal on my property. I can see how someone could miss the Troptions option.
And that's it. The fact that you just told me that story of somebody adding something into a paragraph. I mean, you have to point this stuff out. We have a form contract. That's what we go by. It's the same form every time. So if you're going to add something to your contract, you add it to a separate addendum or something, or at least spell out, hey, we're making this change to the actual contract. You can't just say, hey, here it is, And he's exactly right. If you're buying without an agent, I mean, agents, we do these all the time. So if we're going to get some crazy contract from somebody that is trying to sneak something on you, we're going to kind of figure that out. We brought up a lot of examples in the past where so and so is going to buy your property. It never usually happens, or they're trying to pull one over on you. So just be careful with
this. This is unfortunately the reason that cryptocurrency is still a little bit further out from being like mainstream adopted in terms of real estate, because things like this are so sketchy, and unfortunately, I think set the crypto industry back ever so slightly, and give crypto purchasers a bad name.
Absolutely. Just be wary of what you're doing. And the thing is, Matt had great advice. Let a lawyer look over it. Yeah, it's going to cost you a little bit of money, but man, think about what you're saving. This guy just lost $35,000 in that contract.
Yeah. So speaking of an area that does have a lot of crypto buyers and sellers, New York. This comes to us from Curbed. New York now has more Airbnb listings than apartments for rent. And it seems like just yesterday we were talking about how deeply discounted the rents were in New York City, and how New York
that
City
changes,
was a ghost town. So according to a recent report from Douglas Elliman, inventory in all of Manhattan, Brooklyn, and Northwest Queens, so not all the boroughs, but Manhattan, Brooklyn, Northwest Queens, hovering around 7,700 rentals in April, whereas entire home Airbnb rentals in New York City right now is around 10,500. So more, according to AirDNA, which pulls from the Airbnb API on the site. So essentially, more short-term rentals in these areas than long-term rentals, which housing advocates will look at this and say, here is example 1A for why there's not affordable places to live in the city, because all of these, 10,000 units have been removed from the long-term rental inventory, making it tougher for people to actually find affordable apartments. That's what housing advocates will say. Airbnb, literally Airbnb will say, well, if, Joe Schmo, wants to rent out his townhouse for the weekend, or he's out of town for a month, this is a great way to put food on the table, to feed his family, and to pay the bills. And usually with things like this, the truth lies like somewhere in between.
Yeah.
Like there's more rentals because, it's a great way to make, additional income for homeowners. And, the reason that New York is not affordable for a lot of people is not because there's more people renting, but it could be a small portion of that could be true, Shawn. So when I see these numbers, it's a little concerning because we don't want to turn entire metropolitan areas into like hostels and into like hotels. But at the same time, I mean, we were begging for like tourists to spend their disposable income on like local small businesses and restaurants in cities, and what better way to do it than having available options in a big city like New York City. Shawn, I kind of giving a roundabout answer of how I feel about this, but when you see figures like this that show that there's just not as many apartments for rent as there are short-term options, what sort of things start running through your mind in terms of like housing affordability, in terms of like sustainable wages, in terms of, creating a city where people in the city and people moving to the city can actually afford to live in the city?
Yeah, it's a tough situation. My brother used to live in New York City, and he was on the radio, and radio doesn't pay that much, and he was struggling. But when I'd go visit him, I go into bars, restaurants, and things, and I'm like, how are these people affording to stay in the city? And a lot of them were commuting in, but they're coming from a borough outside of Manhattan. And I'm like, how are they affording this? This is, they're working for tips or whatever it is, but like, this is super expensive area. So I don't know what the answer is on this. What I can say is, we're in free markets, and when somebody is trying to make money on an investment, they want to make the most that they can, right? And so where I think this is pulling away from is some of the hotels, right? The hotels have got to be hurting because there's so many more options for people now than just going to these high-priced hotels. But one example I would think about is beach towns, right? New York is kind of like that because it's so touristy, but beach towns the same way. Like if I buy a beach house, I'm going to rent that out on a weekly basis because that's where the money is. And then I'm going to go use that on when I want to. But think about the people that live and work in these towns that need a place to live so that they can make the area run. Well, they've got to find landlords there that have been there for a long time that can afford to charge a reduced rent because, I lived in Ocean City. I paid back then when I was 18, I paid like $1,500 the whole summer, but there were like 5 of us squashed in this little place. And so that's going on over and over again. People are just living with multiple roommates just to try to pay the bills. And it's tough. It's a tough situation. I don't know that there's a perfect answer for it. But the fact that there's so many, and we've got to understand that a lot of these are those people that are going away for the week or whatever, and they're giving out their personal residence. But this is why there are laws against Airbnb in certain condo buildings, to keep that, I guess, short-term thing going, right?
Well, the first thing that should come to mind when someone, looks at this article is like, regulate. We should regulate this. And New York City does have very strict Airbnb short-term rental regulations. And, if you're in a Class A multifamily building, you're not allowed to rent out your entire apartment on a short-term basis. However, how many buildings in New York City are Class A, and who really cares about the rules? Some people, they see the rules, they say, great, I'm still going to do it. And maybe you've seen some of these TikTok videos that show like sketchy Airbnbs like behind like a restaurant wall or something like that. There was one that went viral like a year ago where they looked out their window and it was like a restaurant, like the inside of a restaurant. Wow. So if there are rules, you need to actually like slap people on the wrist when they're breaking the rules, because I looked at the rules for New York City. I'm like, okay, these make perfect sense. How can anyone rent out their apartment? But then again, you have 10,000 apartment rentals in New York City, and so, not all of them are apartments. Some are brownstones, some are whatever. But the article says, if you're looking to rent out like a 1-bedroom apartment, you're better luck finding like a weekly 1-bedroom brownstone rental, like basement apartment rental, than you are just like a 1-bedroom in the city. And I'm sure the cost would be exorbitant. But when you mention beach towns, I'm thinking of like community, I'm thinking of culture, I'm thinking of like meeting your neighbors, and certainly having like a bunch of short-term rentals is like a terrible way to like create a sort of culture. So Shawn, I mean, in the future, is every block in New York City going to become just this like Airbnb destination? Because the thing about hotels is hotels are always going to have a place for people coming to the city, because like you walk into like the Waldorf Astoria and it's like grandiose, and you get served like a continental breakfast, and there's like a doorman that opens up the door, and the concierge is there, and there's a gym, and there are all these things.
People want that.
Airbnb is like a couple mattresses on the floor, like in New York City at like the cheapest rate possible. So I think they can coexist like at the same time. But I am ever so concerned that big cities could just turn into these transient short-term areas, especially when you have, larger employees not requiring people to come into the office. I'm not saying employers should require people to come into the office. I'm simply pontificating on the fact that there's a ton of not only rentals, but demand for short-term rentals. The only reason there's so many rentals is because there's demand for short-term rentals.
Yeah. I mean, and people are paying high dollar for it. And not everybody is in for the short-term rental. I mean, how many times have I booked something on Airbnb personally? 0.
You're not an Airbnb guy.
I'm not an Airbnb guy.
Let's dive deep on this.
And that's the thing.
Why?
Because I like to know what I'm getting.
So
right?
where do you go? So where do you go?
I don't go anywhere. I tell my wife, hey, can you look and find us something?
So she does it.
So the funny thing is,
you go to Florida, you go to the Outer Banks.
Yeah. Florida, Outer Banks, Ocean City.
Where do you, so you don't stay, you stay with family in Florida or no?
No.
You used to?
No. We will.
You don't stay at that house anymore.
So I actually, I'm going to Ocean City. So I got I went through a real estate company. Where did we find that?
Support those real estate agents.
I always do.
You gave someone a commission.
But it's a short-term rental. I mean, it's a townhouse on the water, on the bay side that I rented, and I didn't want to go hotel, because if you've ever stayed in Ocean City, the hotels kind of suck.
Yeah,
they're awful.
So let's rewind. How did you start your search? Did you say, I want to look on VRBO, I want to look on this realtor's website, I want to look on hotels.com? What's the process?
I think first we started at hotels.com and we realized that we weren't going to spend $800 a night on the boardwalk.
On a 2-star hotel.
Yeah, it's like it's crazy. So then I'm like, all right, well, let's go on. Honestly, I just went to this like mom and pop shop for Ocean City Rentals, and I found it on that, and that was what. So then I'm dealing directly with the real estate company that is the property manager of this property, and they sent me a contract. Sent me a full contract that I had to sign. I had to pay X amount up front, and then I had to send them a check for the rest.
Was it like a week long or a weekend?
It's a week. Yeah, it's a week. And a lot of those are week rentals.
Week to week, yeah.
But that's the thing is, in that area, that's mainly what is there. That's what's making the money.
So an Airbnb was not even in the consideration.
So what happened to us is we actually tried to book something on VRBO in North Carolina, and it was such a pain in the butt, right? Here's the reason. One, you go through VRBO and they're just a site, right? And so everybody is paying that middleman. It's a middleman to middleman to middleman. And so your fees get up there. To try to cancel that is such a pain. What happened was, in this example, my wife booked it on VRBO. Oops, something went wrong. So she tried again. Book it. Oops, something went wrong. Tried again. What the heck's going on? So she logged off of that, went directly to the company and booked it. Okay, you're booked directly with the company. What happened? VRBO sends 3 emails later. Hey, congratulations. Hey, congratulations. Hi, After the website said it's not available or something was wrong with the website, it sends 3 confirmations. So now we have 4 rooms in the same place. Now we've got to get rid of those. So to get rid of it, we're sorry, we keep 15%, right? So it was like, wait a second. First of all, your website said that it didn't work, and we kept trying. Why would we try to book 3 different rooms at once, right? So it's this bad experience, and then trying to get your money back was like, it was a weeks long thing of trying to get this back. We finally did, but it wasn't easy, and I think there were a lot of people in that situation. So once you have a bad experience, you're like, why am I going to go to the middleman? Why go there when I can go straight to the source? And that is a real estate company that is managing the property.
And then if you were going to go to like a big city like New York, if you're going to take your family to New York, which you have 2 young kids, I don't know why you'd ever want to take your family to New York City. It sounds like you'd probably, go on hotels.com. You'd do something like that.
Yeah, I would do hotels.com. And that's normally how I do that when I know my whole family's going. It's like, all right. And it's an area that we don't go to a lot. I'm going to go somewhere reputable of something that I know. Right. Mm-hmm. I'm not just going to rely on something because you hear horror stories, and I don't want to be in a horror story when I'm trying to enjoy myself.
The old bait and switch, is definitely prevalent on Airbnb, depending on what you look at. I mean, there's some markets where the only inventory is houses. Like if you're going to go to like a national park, like in a couple of years, maybe your kids are going to be at the age where they could appreciate a national park.
Yeah, and it all depends on where you're staying. I mean, I stayed in the Airbnb with you in Miami, and that was fantastic.
Miami penthouse in Brickell.
It was great.
Who booked that?
That was him, not me.
If you booked the Miami stay, where would we have been staying? Like a Hilton, like a Hyatt.
That's what I know, man. I got to say, I'm a little older.
Continental breakfast.
That's right.
Like pancakes and
so yeah. I mean, I don't. Juice. Yeah. I don't know that there's an answer to that. I mean, regulation. Some people hate regulation. I think there has to be some sort of, which we know condos are regulating that sort of thing. And, people live in these condos, these high rises. They don't want just a mass amount of people coming in there weekly or whatever every other day to stay for a couple of nights, because we all know what happens in those instances. They're partying, they're having a good time because they're on vacation. This is somewhere that we live. We take pride in this, and we don't want that happening in the wall next door.
Net effective median rent in Manhattan went up year over year to a new high of $3,925.
It's amazing.
Largest rate on record. Listing inventory had the most significant annual decline on record.
And while we're talking about rentals, and this drives me crazy, is one of our coworkers rents, and she just had her rent pop up $500 a month. All right, $500 a month was over 25% increase in the monthly rental. And this is the problem with going straight to these big companies. And if anybody has rented over the last 2 years, we actually saw a dip in the rental values because of COVID. And so it was tough to rent out. So they were giving all these incentives for these big companies, these high rises in Arlington to get people in. But then what happens is bam, hey, your rent just went up. And you're kind of stuck. You're like, well, I don't want to move, but I'm kind of forced to because my rent just went up $500 or over 30%. It's crazy.
$500. You'll have to tell me
Her
who that
rent
is.
was $1,450 and it went up $500.
I mean, that's just like not affordable at that price.
Yeah, it's not for a studio in Boston. That's crazy.
It's like forcing you to move out.
Yeah.
Is that Lindsay?
Yeah.
$500.
Her rent for a studio is going up to over, I think it was $2,200.
Did she get like the buy 12 months, get 2 months?
I don't know exactly what her deal is, but I was like, listen, you got to go. You could rent a 1-bedroom for $1,800-$1,900 in a good condo building where you don't have to deal with that stuff.
Apartments are sketchy like that.
It's crazy.
All right, let's move on to our third topic. And this comes to us from Zillow. Zillow did a report on the most popular suburban markets of early 2022. Shawn, Pricey Suburbs topped the list. And coming in at number 2 is Burke, Virginia, as the second most popular market of Q1 2022. It's amazing. It edged out other suburbs, Highlands Ranch, just outside of Denver, West Chase, just outside of Tampa, and Edmonds, Washington, just outside of Seattle, rounding out the top 5, with the most expensive being Woodinville, Washington, just outside of Seattle. So 2 Seattle suburbs topping the list in the top 5. Burke, Virginia. It's incredible. It's amazing. It's shocking, but it's not. It's really not, because if you live in Northern Virginia and you are trying to buy a house in a quaint neighborhood with strollers and dogs and lakes and activities and fishing and rowboats, and your budget's under like $1 million, this is the area that you're going to be in. You're going to be in Burke, because for the longest time, I don't want to call them starter houses, but these ramblers, these split levels, these Tudors, colonials, they're going to fit what you're looking for, and they're going to be priced between $650 and $850, and now we're trending closer to the $850 and $900. And I had one buyer, we were putting an offer on what seemed like every single property in Burke. I'm the Burke expert now, and we had just watched the market go from $700 to $750 to $800 to $850. We closed on the house at $850. The houses that we didn't win, that we bid $50,000, $80,000, $90,000 over, they're going for $900. They're going for $925, $950. One of them went for $999 in the Burke, West Springfield area. So this is definitely a hotbed for those home buyers that are kind of like, I would say maybe past the condo life. Maybe they're millennials buying a house for their dog that needs a backyard. Maybe they're about to have their first kid, kind of in that phase of like, okay, we have a little bit of a down payment saved up. We have a little bit of, some money lying around. Now it's time to buy our single family house. What area is going to have, generally good schools, generally, good places to walk around, generally good connectivity close to DC. Burke is going to top the list. Shawn, what are your thoughts on Burke being the number 2 in the nation most popular market?
Is insanity to me. And here's the thing. Burke is a really nice area, right? It's a nice area of trees, but people around here Burke wasn't a destination, right? It wasn't like, I want to live in Burke, right? It just wasn't. It wasn't that trendy, right? It wasn't one of those areas that was getting a lot of attention. It would, here and there, people would say, oh, I'd love to live in Burke, but it wasn't, people weren't racing to get there, right? But what happened was, it is such a good location. It's just outside the Beltway. You have good roads to come into DC, into the city, and the properties were very affordable. They were probably undervalued for what you could get. And so what happened was, everybody that was living inside the Beltway said, all right, well, I don't necessarily want to move way out into Loudoun County. I need to find the next affordable thing close in. And that was Burke, Virginia. And so all the people that had sold their property in Arlington or in DC, they they had a money fall, basically a whirlwind of money when they sold their property, and they said, all right, well, I can afford much more out in Burke, and I have the cash to prove it, and I'm going to prove it in my offer. And these offers were crazy. And Matt and I had listings out there this year. I think mine, I priced this thing at the top of the market and at the top of the subdivision of where I thought it should go, and it went $160,000 over the asking price. 160 grand.
160.
I mean, that was unheard of. So, you know, that is exactly what happened. These people just had the cash. There was so much cash, you know, and they're just spending it. And there was no inventory. And Burke was the affordable area. So it just shot, you know.
Yeah, I'm pulling up a map of Northern Virginia right now. And, you know, people can be concerned with like moving out. Like, I want to stay close in. I don't want to be so far out. I don't want to be, I feel like I'm out in the sticks. It's like, Burke is pretty close in. Like, you are not out in the sticks. You know, you move out to South Riding, you move out to like Bull Run, you move out to Stone Ridge. It's like, all right, you're out there. You have a really nice house out there. But Burke, you're kind of in that middle ground where you're about 20 miles into the city. Yeah. So it's very convenient. There's a large subset of single family houses. Like in Arlington, it's like apartments, condos, single family house neighborhood, apartments, condos. In Burke, a lot of these subdivisions are like primarily like a cul-de-sac with like houses and
good lots,
lots.
Wooded. It's very wooded. It's I mean, it's a nice, quiet place, right? I mean, and the thing is, you have nature, right? You can go to a pond, you can go to a lake. There's conveniences there.
For the houses that are selling in the 9s, I don't think it's overvalued, but I don't think it's undervalued either.
Yeah,
you know,
it's funny. It's
prolific statement by myself, but it's as things start expanding and as the market starts cooling off, people may say, oh my gosh, like, you bought in Burke for how much? But then, you know, we look at people in Leesburg, people in Aldi, people that bought in like Nokesville, and all things considered, Burke is a hotbed for, you know, area amenities and convenience. So it has this perfect combination where as Arlington, I don't think can ever be like the hottest market anymore, right? Simply because it was the hottest market, and now it's priced up to the point where, you know,
how much further can you go?
Yeah, right? And you can dangerous question. No, I know. You can always go further, but now we're talking about, okay, well, how many buyers are we going to have for, you know, this colonial that's 1,800 square feet priced at $1.4 million versus a house 3 times the size priced at, you know, $800,000. You're going to have a lot more for that, as we found out. I think the most offers, you can tell me how many you got on Legend Gate, but I think the most offers, and I care about the name of the street, like Legend Gate, like I want to live on Legend Gate Street or Legend Gate Place or whatever. My clients, we bid on a house on Blue Jug Court. Like, I don't know about resale values on Blue Jug Court.
Blue Jug,
but there were literally 26 offers on Blue Jug Court, and there was I'm gonna get this wrong. I think there was only 1 bathroom upstairs. I might be getting that wrong, but there was something where it was like, okay, well, you know, we'll go this much over, and then, you know, we'll get contractors in there to see how much, you know, it'll cost to like add a bathroom upstairs. It's like, wait a second. You have to go this much over and then figure out how much you're going to add to it. So yeah, Blue Jug Court was popping off.
That's crazy. Yeah, Legend Gate, I got 16 offers on that.
16.
160,000 over. It was a cool house. I mean, it was definitely a neat place. It was unique for Burke. It wasn't your split level, right? It was a newer home that had some really cool qualities to it, and you know, higher ceilings and just a cool feel, different feel.
If you got another listing like right now, like across the street from Legend Gate, because that was what do you call it, a patio home?
Yeah,
is that what you call it?
Patio.
It's kind of like, it was a single family detached, I believe, but it kind of had that townhouse feel for it. Like, how would you even go about pricing a comp? Because a recent article came out on CNBC that says home listings suddenly jump as sellers worry they may miss out on the next red hot housing market.
Yeah.
Home sales jumped 9% last week compared with the same week 1 year ago. So everyone's seeing it. If you literally Google real estate in Google News, every single thing is housing market has cooled. Housing market has cooled down. Housing market has stopped. Why this bubble is different than the last bubble. So for let's say the Burke market, when you see these properties closing for $160,000 over, $100K over, $50K over, how do you begin to even comp that out? Because the buyers that have bought those properties have now found their home, and the buyers that are out there now are at a much different interest rate and buying power.
Yeah, you have to be careful. And I would not be pricing it at the top of the market where these things sold. And the reason being is because they're just not there anymore. They're not pushing the value up. When interest rates spiked so quickly, when we talked about this, they went up 2% quicker than in 2 months. That really took a bite out of the top end. And so just 2 months ago, when a property sold for 160 over, now look at the difference in payment in that regard. So you have to be smart. And we're seeing price drops partly because people are overpricing their homes. They're basing it on the fury that we had, and the fury just isn't there. We're not seeing 16, 24 contracts anymore. We're seeing a few, which is still strong. It's still a strong seller's market. Don't be scared, but it's just not 16. It's not 20. And so people are starting to drop those prices because they're pricing them where that market took it, and it's no longer there. So you have to be smart about it and price it where you think the market is now. And what you should do is do your research on where these people were pricing them to begin with, because that was kind of the bottom, and then the thing pushed it up. So you should be probably somewhere in the middle there. One thing that I told my sellers and tell my sellers now is, listen, go with a number that you're going to feel comfortable with. Don't think that the market's going to push it up there. So, I have something coming up in the 750 range. Some of the comps were up at 775, and I'm like, but they started at 735 and they pushed up to 775. So where are we going to price it? I said, you don't want to price it at the 775 mark. That's where they pushed it. They started at 735. Maybe we should start at 749.9, but you have to be comfortable with getting 749.9 because that's what the market might give you, right? But the market also might give you 7.25. So it's really tough right now to figure out where to go. Just do not push it to that ultimate level.
Proper expectations with sellers are definitely conversations to be had. In an article from CNBC, Lindsay Katz, a real estate broker with Redfin in LA, said something similar to what you just said, Shawn. We used to get 10 to 15 offers on most houses. Now I'm seeing between 2 and 6 offers on a house, on a good house. And I've been talking with other real estate agents. I have this single family house listing in Arlington, priced at $840. Not getting as many showings as we'd like. Shawn, the house right next door recently closed for $850. We're better than that house, but we can only be as good as the market. And if the market is softer, then we're going to appear softer as well. And I spoke to 2 other agents who had similar listings. Another property on George Mason Drive, right next to Lacey Woods Park, next to your stomping grounds. Yeah. Priced at $899.9 is sitting on the market with not many showings. And then another property in Douglas Park, DP, priced below $900,000, is also not getting many showings. So maybe people have checked out for the Memorial Day weekend, yeah. Shawn. I know this is a big thing. I have.
I have as well. And I'm telling you, this is a big thing. So don't be too scared, but we see normal trends. So we just saw the spring market. The spring market drives everything. That's just a normal thing. We see a huge peak in spring, and then we see summer cool down, and then we see a little peak in the fall, and then we're slow in the winter, and then we see another peak next spring. So people are checking out for Memorial Day, and I purposely put on 3 places last week because I didn't want to come on over Memorial Day weekend because it's usually slower.
So the house in Arlington, we've been on the market for about 8 days now, 7-8 days. I give it about 14 to 21 before any sort of strategy adjustment, because we want to wait for the dust to settle for things to start.
That's a good strategy, because you need to, all right, let the spring market settle down. Let people realize, all right, we're in summer now. or we're going on vacation. We're thinking about, but this weekend is a big weekend. This is the weekend that everybody takes off and they're just like, boom. So if you're looking to buy, this is a good weekend to buy.
Yeah.
This is a good weekend to get your buyers out there because there's not going to be a ton of activity in our area.
Good weekend to buy South Fillmore Street. Over asking.
That's right.
Over asking only. All right, guys. Well, there you have it. Another episode of the Shawn and Matt Show. If you made it this far, be sure to hit the thumbs up button. Subscribe if you haven't already. Leave us a review on Spotify, Apple Playlists, whatever your favorite podcast player is. And until next time, we'll see you then.
Take care.